Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome. We're in the middle of some oil burning experiments on a 2002 Corolla with the 1ZZ FE engine in it. It was originally using about 1.25 quarts of oil in 300-ish miles, and after various chemical treatments, the usage dropped to about 1.25 quarts in 800 to 1,000 miles. Most recently, we were trying to see how much oil is being introduced into the cylinders through the PCV system, and at the end of the last video, we installed a catch can. A catch can is a reservoir designed to catch any oil vapors coming out of the PCV valve before they can get deposited into the intake manifold. Today, we'll see how much, if any, oil is being burned due to the PCV system. We've gone about 42 miles. I'm curious to see if this thing has any oil in it yet. I don't know if this little dipstick will tell us much since it's got to go through that Brillo pad, but can smell something on it. Of course, this is getting pinched. All right, let's see. Let's just unscrew it. Is there any oil in there yet? No, nothing to speak of. Of course, it could be that that's pinched off. So you can see this whole thing flattened out. I need to get some more rigid hose for that side. Now while we're here, let's go for a little walk in the woods. I smell the Iliagnus blooming. That's another good smell. I don't know why, but this path always looks so inviting. Let's go down this little hill here to this nice sandy bank. Butterflies like to come down to the damp sand and get a drink. See if I can get close to this one without scaring it. Oh, we got a bunch of scientific minds watching this. That butterfly there, and all these plants and trees and creatures we don't even see. I hear some crickets. Birds. The second law of thermodynamics says that everything runs from order to chaos. You know, the law of entropy. So, where did all this order come from if everything always moves from order to chaos? Thought it was a beech tree. It's a hackberry. It's like a giant elephant's leg extending out of the sky into the ground. Wow, look at the bark on that thing. That was a cottonwood. Obviously dead now. That thing is huge. That's more than 4 feet in diameter. And you got these high tension power lines right there. Necessary evil, right? But as complicated as those high tension power lines are and the electricity that flows through them, it's probably not half as complicated as one cell in one of these leaves on one of these trees. Something else I find interesting is pretty much all creatures have a face. I mean, like that bee back there has what looks like 2 eyes. Maybe they have more eyes than that, I'm not sure. But for the most part, they look like they have 2 eyes. They look like they have a face, almost like something we could relate to. So I think most people can relate to this. Most animals have some sort of a face that is fascinating. You know, when you go to the zoo and an animal looks at you, a lion or a monkey or an ostrich or a whatever, you know, it's fascinating. They all have faces, and it's across the whole board. It's not just mammals. You know, like I said, it's insects. You know, think about a praying mantis looking at you. You might have seen that before. Even stuff like serpents, you know, frogs, fish. Why do fish have faces? Why do they have a mouth and 2 eyes? Why does everything have 2 eyes, or at least look like it has 2 eyes? Birds, dolphins, whales, reptiles, mammals, pretty much everything has a face. That I find fascinating. Look at this fungus taking care of this downed tree here. In a few years, this whole thing will just be a memory. I have an idea. How about we just go 300 miles with that hose kind of pinched the way it is, to see if pinching off the PCV hose will make a difference. And then after about 300 miles, we'll replace it with a hose that can have some flow and see if that makes any difference. 250 miles on it, and we're about to head to Newberry for a cross-country meet. So we should hit 300 today. Man, that went through there like a sieve. 320 miles. All right, let's thicken it up with some 5W30.
I'm doing great ASMR for Dad's video.
We've gone about 390 miles since installing the catch can, even in this pinch state, and I'm curious to see what the cylinders and valves look like right now, since the blow-by is not being fed directly back into the throttle body here. So let's take another look at the cylinders. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's see where we are. All right, there's cylinder number 1 bottomed out. Does the cylinder look drier? It does look a little drier. Let's look at the intake valves. Doesn't look like there's so much oil. Get these to open up. But there's still a pretty good bit of oil inside. Let's look at number 4. Very oily in number 4. Well, that piston looks very oily too. Look at that right there, it just came up. Yep, there's a lot of oil in number 4 there. Oh, look at that. You can see the intake port up there at the top right. I should have cleaned those puddles up out of the intake. This is kind of a tainted observation here. Let's switch cameras and look at that piston. Yeah, that piston's pretty oily. Let's see what numbers 2 and 3 tell us. Go down number 3. Number 3 is very oily, as usual. There's the intake valves. Let's see if number 2 is open. Wow. Is that number 2 intake valves? Yes, it is. They look pretty dry. I'll go back around to the exhaust valves to show. Yeah, okay, so there's the exhaust valves. They're very dry. So number 2, though that intake runner showed the most oil in it when we were looking at it before, those intake valves look dry. Let's open those up. Still a little oil inside, but the outside is dry. Let's look at number 3. Number 3 looks pretty wet. Yep, there's oil back there around the valve seat. On both valves, number 3 is pretty wet. So which one of these intake runners goes to number 3? Here's number 3. Oh, it's the other bottom one. So that should probably be the second oiliest one. But why is number 2 not looking very oily? Let's go to the auto parts store and get a piece of rigid or more rigid hose. See if it makes any difference. So this is what we ended up getting. 3/8 inch or 9.5 millimeter fuel line. Let's get rid of some oil while we're here. Let's go ahead and take this hose back off and see if we can swab out the throttle body and the lower parts of these intake runners with a paper towel to take the variable of the leftover oil that's in there out of the equation. So I'm just going to try to thread this paper towel as much as I can into this throttle body. We're inside there, swab it around. In number 3 right now. Pull it out. Now we are in number 2. Let's see what it looks like. Looks pretty dry. A little dirty, but pretty dry. Let's go back in there with a scope and see if all that oil is gone from there. Okay, here I was scoping the throttle body the whole time, and I didn't have the main camera on recording it, so I'm gonna go back and explain what I just did and roll in the footage. I just went down each intake runner, and I'm coming out of the last one right now. This is the intake runner going to number 1 cylinder. All of them were clean of oil. There wasn't enough oil in there to make a difference. So I'm not sure why some of the cylinders are staying pretty oily inside, but we'll put that more rigid hose on there and put everything back together and keep driving it for a while and then come back and look again. So the first thing I'm going to do before I forget is get the oil out of this that tiny little bit that was in there so that we can start afresh. It's just enough to kind of coat the bottom in there. It doesn't even puddle in the corner. Wipe that out totally dry. Okey-doke. Put that back in there. Now let's get this thing off. A new piece of hose. I'm going to go ahead and turn this the way it wants to go so it's less likely to pinch. Here. All right. And there's our oil. Reset that. And there's our actual mileage.
It's the sweetest forerunner I've ever seen.
256 miles on it. Let's see what the catch can looks like. It'll be interesting to see if there's any oil in it now that this catch can is appropriately plumbed. There are no kinks. I'm using the right size tubing. First, let's pull this little dipstick, see if it shows us anything. Oh yes it does. So you can see there's oil. Let me just twist it right here. There's a lot of oil on it, but that doesn't necessarily mean this thing has that much oil in it. It does have that Brillo pad looking thing in there. It could just have a lot of oil residue on it. So let's pull this up here. Feels kind of heavy actually. This must be really fine threads. Is that it? There we go. Let's remove this slowly. There isn't even a half an ounce of oil in there. About a teaspoon of oil down there in the bottom. And that's it. What, 256 miles? So don't have to worry about this thing getting overfilled. But we also know that no oil vapors from the PCV valve are getting back into the throttle body and back into the intake. So hopefully next time we scope the engine, we won't see all that oil coming in from the valves. Oh, I almost forgot. We should check the oil. It's actually not bad. So we are at, what I say, 256 miles, and oil is right there. So we're about a 1/4 inch from the top dot. So we probably used about 1/3 of a quart of oil. So that seems like it's improving. I don't know why it would be, but let's keep driving a little while. Tib, I really don't think you can fit in that one. Oh yeah, you beg to differ. You just can't lay down on that one. Leave that out, there you go. Yeah, I'm afraid you're not going to be able to lay down. We're at 508 miles. Just about a 1/4 of an inch above the bottom dot there. The oil might still be a little thin from that 0W20, so we can forgive it. We're definitely not back to where we were after the Berrymans though. Let's check out the catch can. Still just a little bit of oil down in the bottom. All right, let's pull the plugs and check out those valves. One, two, three, four. A viewer commented that these are actually called cannon plugs. Going into cylinder number 1. Okay, there is the bottom of the stroke. The engine is actually a little bit warm. I drove it about an hour ago. So I'm surprised I don't see any wet oil on the piston at the moment. Let's switch cameras and look at the valves. Crank the engine till the intake valves open up. And there we are. Not so much oil inside of there. There's still a good bit of oil in that one. Let's go down another cylinder. Number 4. A lot of oil on those intake valves in number 4. Yep, still got some oil inside of it. Exhaust valve looks dry at the moment. Other intake valve looks fairly oily. All right, let's see what number 3 looks like. I think these are the intake valves, and they actually look fairly dry on the outside, but oily on the inside. Well, both of them. Number 3 looks really oily. All right, let's check out number 2. 2 doesn't look so bad inside. I don't see any puddles on the rim there, at least of that one. What about this one? This one I do. In my opinion, if this were not my car and I had not done everything I've done to it so far, I would say it looks like several intake valve seals are leaking. I don't know why, since they've all been replaced, unless I did something wrong, or one of the chemicals has completely destroyed them. All right, let's change cameras and look at the pistons. See how much oil is on each of the pistons. All right, there's piston number 2. Looks pretty dry. Piston number 3 has a puddle of oil on it. Little puddle. Piston number 4. I'll have to turn this a little bit. Piston number 4 looks fairly oily. Yeah, a little bit of puddle shining right there. And number 1, for the second time, looks fairly dry. Okay, well, now as I said, if I were looking at this with fresh eyes and didn't know anything about the history of this car, I would assume the problem is with the valve stem oil seals. And judging from the comments spread over several of my videos, I would say a lot of you out there think it's the valve stem oil seals too. I, however, am not a highly experienced mechanic, nor an automotive engineer. And thanks to some comments from people a lot smarter than me, I'm not going back down that rabbit hole just yet. Mixter7x7 pointed out a process called reversion. He says, during the valve overlap cycle between the exhaust and intake, the air reverses directions in microseconds. During cruise operation, the air does not have time or energy to change directions, and the oil is burned and exhausted through the pipes. But when the engine is idling or being operated at very low RPMs, exhaust pressure in the manifold/pipe is forcing air to change directions, creating a backward pulse. This pulse carries oil vapor into the intake where the air is cooler, and the vapor oil now condenses into liquid oil deposits inside the lowest points of the intake. What does all this mean? Well, if this hypothesis is correct, we don't need to bother checking the valve stem oil seals again. The oil is likely getting by the piston rings. Also, engines with bad valve stem oil seals usually emit a puff of smoke on startup or after idling. The Corolla doesn't. Engines with ring or cylinder wear issues emit smoke at higher RPMs. This will come up in the next video.
BG Platinum Dynamic Engine Restoration Kit versus stuck piston rings.
If you don't want to miss that and you haven't subscribed yet, as always, thank you for watching. Please comment below, and I hope to see y'all in the next one.